So welcome to this media conference. It's a combined media conference of Markets for Change, Huon Valley Environment Centre, The Last Stand, and with Miranda Gibson of Still Wild, Still Threatened, from the forest in the observatory. I think everybody knows that a resumption to the forest peace talks is sought by most parties, and that there's a closing window of opportunity to get into the earnest negotiations that need to follow the release of the independent verification reports produced by the experts under supervision of Professor Jonathan West. As part of that verification process, it has been confirmed that the 572,000 hectares of forest sought for reservation by the environmental non-government organisations indeed does contain the values that they have claimed are contained within that area, and that is substantially through the entire area. At the same time, the market action that we've taken in Japan has been singled out for comment. I'd remind you that we talked to customer companies in Japan about the source of the wood that Taran Tasmania has been making into product for them in their flooring product. After it was confirmed by experts that wood supply from Taran was driving logging within the 572,000 hectares. That was in the independent schedulers reports that were released in October and November last year, and then a subsequent one for the federal government. So it was very clear that the Taran wood supply was the reason for the logging inside of this area continuing. However, that wood had been advertised to Taran's customer companies as plantation grown and as eco-friendly, neither of which was correct. We are somewhat scathing, I suppose, in our view that what we've been doing has been classed as a protest. What we have been doing is having perfectly normal business meetings with companies who have a corporate objective to have the highest social and environmental values attached to their product. And the meetings that we've had with them have been ordinary business meetings at normal desks in offices in big cities in Japan, and they have involved calmly talking through and looking at pictures of the areas that are being logged and their characteristics, and getting it really clear that these are not in any way plantations, and neither are they forests that have been completely destroyed and replanted in any other way, which is what those people have been led to believe. So today we come to the point of how can we get people back around the table to negotiate what we hope would be the best future for our forests, and a new future that would be secure for the forest industry and the people who work there. So we've got a proposal to make in an effort to get forest negotiations to resume. We will suspend our market action in Japan for the period of 1 month on the condition that logging is suspended within the entire 572,000 hectares of forest that has now been independently verified to have those high conservation values. It is an absolute nonsense to continue logging the very forests that you're talking about protecting, and to be daily destroying the values that you might decide were actually worth saving. So now the time has come to stop that logging, and if that happens, we'll stop our markets campaign in Japan so that those talks about how the future of the forests and the forest industry might be secured can resume. This really puts the onus on the Forest Industries Association of Tasmania as to whether they are at all genuine about wanting to get back into talks or whether they're wanting to attempt to tear them down. We're making our offer and we hope that it will be taken up by government. It means that Forestry Tasmania will have to prove that they're of goodwill and that they're not trying to tear this down. And of course it will mean that the Forest Industries Association will now have an undertaking for us that we will allow these talks to go on under those very specific conditions. I'll now hand over to Miranda Gibson to make her statement from the observatory.
Okay, so today I've been at the top of this tree in the middle of the Tyane Valley for 110 days now, and this area has now been verified by the independent expert group to be of high conservation value and in fact World Heritage value. Yet this area still remains under threat from logging. It's a very first step to have a moratorium put in place on these verified forests, and in fact that moratorium is now well overdue. It's absolutely absurd that they would continue to log these verified forests while they continue to talk about protecting these into the future. And that's why it's important that the degradation of these areas stops immediately, because these are now our potential future national parks and World Heritage areas. So that is why today we're calling for an immediate moratorium on the 572,000 hectares. If this moratorium is put in place, then I would be willing to take a step back from the market campaign that the observatory has launched in Japan and is currently operating in Japan. However, I will also remain through that time in this tree, and I will await a final outcome of the forest negotiations. This is because these forests that have now been verified as high conservation value are critical forests, and I am up here representing these forests and representing the animals that live here. So that's why I'm going to remain in the observatory as a reminder of the importance of these forests and to ensure that the final outcome has at its heart the conservation of Tasmania's world-class forests. Meanwhile, there are a range of critical issues that will need to be resolved in relation to the conservation outcome. Just one example of these is the Forest Practices Code recommendations and the critical issue of ensuring that these recommendations are not watered down, which would in effect create an intensification of logging in areas that are outside of the reserve proposals. So this is just one critical issue that we'll continue to raise. However, the first step really is a critical and important moratorium on those areas of forest that have now been identified as high conservation value.
The West Report provides overwhelming evidence that the globally significant forests in the 572,000 hectares that have now been verified need urgent protection. The overcutting of the native forests in Tasmania at an unsustainable yield is something that Huon Valley Environment Centre is very concerned about, and we will continue to advocate for the protection of these forests. It is the World Heritage values, the National Heritage values and the species protection values that now need to be taken to the negotiation table, and we look forward to seeing the agreement reach the protection of the high conservation value forests that are globally significant and of World Heritage value.
We absolutely reject the preposterous and draconian anti-protest laws that have been called for in recent days. We believe that this is an absolute insult to our basic democratic principles here in Australia. As such, we will be continuing to pursue our domestic campaigns to really raise awareness about the amazing values of these spectacular threatened forests. There is no way on earth that a durable agreement can be reached under the shadow of these absolutely draconian anti-protest laws that have been proposed in recent days.
So what we're offering here today in essence is a moratorium for a moratorium. The forests have been compromising all this time. We've heard a lot of talk about compromise, but it is the forests that have been compromising and are being compromised in terms of their future protection. Now that we know that this full area has been verified to contain high conservation values, the time has come to stop the logging whilst talks go on about what will happen in relation to reservations and all the other matters that are before the signatories talking through forest peace process. So that's it, a moratorium